Around the world, electric vehicles are gaining momentum, and there's no place where the EV revolution has taken hold like China. The world's largest car market is leading the charge in the adoption of zero-emission vehicles, largely due to government subsidies and mandates. And while most of the attention on mitigating pollution is directed at passenger cars, the Chinese have prioritized another area that will have a bigger impact: buses.
In 2018, about 80,000 electric buses were delivered globally, 99% of which were delivered in China. We estimate that approximately 89% of all electric buses delivered globally will be delivered in APAC by 2025.
To the credit of the Chinese government, they realized very early on that this transition globally was going to take place.
China very strategically looked at markets like urban cars and urban buses, and they have been spending billions of dollars to move them off of oil. And if you look at the impact that that's had on China, they have reduced their daily oil consumption by over 200,000 barrels of crude oil.
Buses consume considerably more fuel than the average car, making the transition to electric significant in reducing consumption of fossil fuels.
Buses are responsible in many cities for the majority of specific pollutants and tailpipe emissions. That's because they drive a lot of miles per year, and they're very fuel inefficient as diesel applications.
The more cars they could take off the streets in China, but more importantly, more of the diesel buses they could take off the streets would help air quality in China.
In the US, however, the adoption of zero-emission buses is happening at a much slower pace. Interact Analysis says the US had just 300 buses delivered in 2018, compared to the 78,000 in China.
I think our biggest obstacle here in the U.S. is that we're slow to adopt to new ideas, and we get very comfortable in just the status quo.
The company that delivered the majority of U.S. buses last year is Bay Area-based Proterra.
We're coming up on 100 customers, and we did 25 deployments alone in 2018. So we have buses at Yosemite, we have buses in New York City, we have them in Seattle, we have them in Dallas, Texas. We also have them in a lot of small fleets like Missoula, Montana. So we went through the effort of designing a vehicle from scratch to be an electric vehicle. And that meant rethinking a lot of things that you do in a bus, where the motor is going to be located, where you'd put the energy storage. But ultimately, that gets you to a much higher performance design, and that's why our vehicles have a better handling characteristic and longer range than previous attempts at electric buses.
Before joining Proterra as CEO, Ryan Popple got his start working at Tesla.
Companies like Tesla are doing a phenomenal job in terms of changing this market and changing mentalities around passenger cars. And so the opportunity we have at a company like Proterra is to take state-of-the-art EV technology and make it accessible to every single rider in a city.
Compared to diesel buses, battery electric is far more efficient and can result in significant cost savings for transit agencies.
Our buses use around 2 kilowatt hours of electricity per mile. And if you take the average price of electricity in the US, that's about 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So you need 20 cents of electricity to move our bus 1 mile. Diesel buses, they only get 4 miles to the gallon, and that's on a good day. So if you take today's diesel prices in California, you're probably burning 80 cents of diesel fuel per mile that you drive.
While adoption of battery electric buses has been slow, state mandates are starting to expedite that process. New York City, the largest transit agency in the US, has plans to take its fleet all electric by 2040. And California has taken an aggressive stance in reducing vehicle emissions, requiring all new buses to be zero emissions starting in 2029.
As of December of 2018, the California Air Resources Board voted 12-0 that the entire bus fleet of California is going zero emission.
When that happened, it was a pretty bold statement, but my own personal belief is that transit operators everywhere are going to move in that direction much faster.
San Jose Airport recently converted a portion of their shuttle fleet to Proterra electric buses.
San Jose Airport, as a microcosm, it's an example of what we think the entire bus industry could look like 10 years from now.
The major thing in deciding to get electric buses was really the initiative that our city has and our mayor has for sustainability and going green. Right now, we're in a bit of a transition phase where we have our current CNG fleet mixed with our electric fleet. But here very quickly, we'll slowly phase out our CNG fleet.
These vehicles are part of the City of San Jose's long-term sustainability plan. They have a path to run on 100% carbon-free electricity. So they are zero emission today to the local community, and their future is to be a zero carbon transportation system as well.
North of Los Angeles, Antelope Valley Transit Authority is on track to be the first all-electric metro fleet in the U.S. Their e-buses are made by Chinese company BYD.
By the end of this year, we'll have all our local transit fleet will be electric. The only diesel bus will be left are the 30 or so commuter vehicles that take our customers down to LA.
To power these buses, Antelope Valley is turning to solar power.
We have enough solar capacity on hand now to run the maintenance shop, the administration building, basically everything but charging the buses. So we've been in negotiations with a couple different solar providers to provide the rest of the solar we need to be 100% off-grid and a fairly sizable battery pack so that we can also charge at night.
Antelope Valley says solar and battery power are more reliable than fossil fuel or charging the buses on the traditional power grid.
Any fuel type is subject to interruption. A few years back there was an earthquake that broke the natural gas lines that ran into Oxnard. Diesel fuel lines can be cut off, a refinery explosion can shut off fuel supply. But I feel really strongly that with solar and battery storage, that we'll have more resilience than any other fleet or fuel type currently running in North America.
Since converting their buses to battery electric, Antelope Valley has seen a few benefits.
We figured we avoided 1,300,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. We avoided 285,000 gallons of diesel fuel, which saved us about $500,000, and that was just with a third of the fleet and 1 million miles. Those numbers extrapolated out to 12 years equals $65 million in savings. So not only is it good for the environment, but it makes economic sense.
Being a pioneer for an all-electric fleet, Antelope Valley has garnered the interest of other municipal agencies evaluating the technology for themselves.
The response has been overwhelming, and we probably get 5-6 requests a month for tours of the facility, show people how our infrastructure is working, how our charging systems are working, and we're living proof that it works, it saves money, and actually the vehicles are more reliable than our legacy fleet of diesel and hybrid vehicles.
But there is one area where questions remain: the charging infrastructure.
Strategically all around the valley, we've got in-route chargers that wirelessly charge the buses over an air gap. So when the bus pulls into the transit center for its normal 10-minute layover while customers get on and off, it's actually picking up a brief charge too. And by doing that 7 or 8 times a day, we add 100, 120 miles of range.
BYD, the company that makes Antelope Valley's buses, has a manufacturing plant in nearby Lancaster, California.
We've been here about 6 years, and we're producing roughly around 7 different models of electric buses that are earmarked for use in the United States at transit agencies, universities, large employer campuses, and airports.
Though it originally started as a battery company, BYD is now the world's largest EV manufacturer.
We're not only in China, we're in the UK, we're in South America, we're in Central America, we're in Mexico, we're in the Caribbean, we're in Canada. So again, it being a global problem, BYD wants to be part of the global solution.
Aside from the environmental benefits, electric buses are also less prone to maintenance issues and are cleaner to work on.
It's fun to take these out, show the maintenance people, and they're often very surprised at how simple and elegant the design is. They're used to a massive diesel engine that's dirty and it's incredibly complicated, and these vehicles are very, very simple to operate and maintain.
The way diesels are able to stay on the road right now is they have particulate traps that trap the soot, basically, the diesel exhaust produces. When you get the soot out, it becomes a hazardous material. It has to be disposed of through the EPA hazardous material disposal process. It's also very expensive because you're sending it essentially to a landfill meant for hazardous materials.
It's actually got 30% less moving parts. My job's a lot easier as far as, troubleshooting and figuring out what things may be wrong at the time.
While China may be in the lead in number of e-buses in circulation, some believe that the U.S. still excels from a technology standpoint.
This renaissance of manufacturing, design, and engineering that's happening in the electric vehicle space, a lot of the best work is being done in the United States. We want to make sure that we have a competitive advantage in the world as the world transitions to cleaner, quieter electric vehicles.
We'll never catch them just from population and demand for vehicles, but I think technologically we're there, and I think that we're going to continue to improve to where we might be ahead of them sooner or later.
The fact that US is growing is a great sign. We saw more than 100% growth in 2018 compared to the previous year. We estimate there to be about roughly about 2,000 electric buses delivered annually by 2025 within America.
And as more electric buses make their way into U.S. public transit systems, the companies making the vehicles say their technology can be used far beyond city buses.
School buses should be coming right on top of that. We have a partnership for coach buses, and we're also partnering with a UK manufacturer for double-decker electric buses.
And eventually we're going to see these into trucks for delivery locally, things like garbage trucks as well. We think pretty much every heavy-duty vehicle that you see out there in our cities and towns is going to be electric at some point in the near future.
It's really a no-brainer. The economics are there, the benefits ecologically and environmentally are there. And I think what China has done is showing leadership to the world, funding and pushing forward their own fleets to get green and clean. In the United States, we've got probably 5 companies now that are doing electric buses, and virtually every automaker is introducing an electric vehicle. So I think the change is here for good.